All right, man, peace. So the current commissioner of the NFL, Roger Goodell, has found himself in the crosshairs of the NFL owners. Of course, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Well, there were also some fireworks before the game, with the Texans protesting their own team's owner, Bob McNair, who compared players to inmates last week. So far, Roger Goodell has not been able to diffuse the conflict between players and owners over protests. And now, reportedly, Cowboy owner Jerry Jones is leading the charge to halt negotiations for a contract extension with Roger Goodell, the commissioner. So, Whitlock, do you blame Jerry Jones for losing confidence in Roger Goodell?
Well, before Whitlock answers, let me say this first. No, I cannot blame the owners for losing confidence in Roger Goodell. Roger Goodell's job is to see things happening before they happen and to levy preemptive strikes and to protect the league at all costs. As I've stated before, he's supposed to be the proverbial Coast Guard of the NFL. He's supposed to see things coming and warn everybody before the attacks can actually take effect. Once Colin Kaepernick's protest gained as much notoriety and as much publicity as it did, he was supposed to, in the off-season, craft a plan to put in place in case the protest spread. He failed to do so. Beyond that, of course, Jerry Jones has a personal axe to grind because of the Ezekiel Elliott situation.
No, not at all. And that's not a major indictment of Roger Goodell. You're a movie buff. Everybody here has probably seen The Godfather. Roger Goodell is Tom Hagen, and he's not a wartime consigliere.
Absolutely. Roger Goodell is not built for what's going on right now. He's not built for it in any way, shape, or form. Right now, there are some things going on in America that are starting to creep into the NFL. There are some manipulations that are going on in mainstream society that are creeping into the sports world, willfully, is purposefully.
He's not built for this situation the NFL is in right now. There's a culture war going on in America.
Absolutely. And even more than that, an ideological war going on right now in America. And it's not even really righteous versus wicked. It's really just wicked versus slightly less wicked. That's really all that's going on right now. A lot of confusion, and nobody really seems to be able to see the truth or to know how to combat what's being done against them.
Roger Goodell is asleep at the wheel, and it's like, if you really understand the movie The Godfather, the reason why Sonny Corleone had a problem with Tom Hagen, the reason why Michael Corleone is like, he's not a Sicilian, so he doesn't understand this war we're in. We got to move him to the side.
Absolutely. And that's a great analogy. And beyond that, Tom Hagen was really crafted to work alongside Vito. Vito came in and he really laid the groundwork for the families, and he was able to develop a good relationship with the other families that were operating in New York. When Sonny came into power after Vito got shot, Sonny had no leadership capabilities. None. He had a very, very bad temper, and it was really in the hands of Tom Hagen to run the family. He was unable to do so, and he was unable to give appropriate advice to Sonny, which fell right into the hands of the other five families because Sonny, having the temper that he had, it was easy to manipulate him. That's why they were able to sucker him into the hit that occurred at the at the highway turnstile. But that's neither here nor there. Point being is that depending on the situation that you're in life, you have to be careful of who's advising you. All right? You have to be careful of who you have involved in a decision-making capacity.
Roger Goodell's not a conservative like most of his bosses.
Yeah.
He doesn't understand the war they're in. It's not because he's done a bad job. The situation is not right for Roger Goodell. It's not right for Joe Lockhart, who he hired, the former Clinton employee. They got the wrong consigliere.
Let me...
I agree. And this thing has come upon them so fast that they're not going to have time to figure out who should rule. So it would not shock me at all to see them try to place an owner in the position of commissioner. Maybe Jerry Jones, maybe the owner for Bob Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots. But it would not shock me in an emergency situation for them to place an owner in the position of commissioner, because I do believe that they're very unhappy with Roger in regards to how he has allowed this protest situation to spiral out of control to where it will affect their bottom line in a big way. I'm not even talking about in regards to what the CEO of the pizza company has stated, Papa John's. I'm not even referring to that. I'm talking about the issue with Trump and the tax levies that he's threatened against the NFL.
Let me defend Goodell and let me defend all public figures. Barack Obama was the first president that had to deal with the vulgarity and the anger of social media. Reagan didn't, Jimmy Carter didn't, the Bushes didn't.
That's true, but at the same time, as you come through different administrations, you're expected to have a brain trust of people that are able to forewarn you and prepare you for the changing environment. And that's really what's wrong with Roger Goodell. He was entrusted with a certain duty, and right now, his duties have mushroomed because of the expansion of communication, what Colin Cowherd has noted as the social media age. He has to adjust with the times, or he's going to be moved aside. He has to be moved aside because time is always flowing.
Roger Goodell is one of the first commissioners who has had to deal with social media. It's toppled governments. It can certainly topple a commissioner. It is harder to be a senator, a president, a celebrity, a public figure, where if you have a drink in your hand and they take a picture of it, he's an alcoholic, he's out of control. I think it's hard to be a commissioner.
I don't really think it's that hard to be a commissioner in regards to the perspective that you're stating, Colin. The reason for that is that his job is to pay attention to what's going on around him. His job is just not to call players into his office and read them the riot act like he's their stepdad or something. His job is to stay ahead of the curve. That's his job. And if he can't do that, then he's really moot. He's not relevant. They have to find a new position or a new person to fill that position. This is why you have a changing of the architecture in the corporate world now. At one point, you didn't have a division in your corporation for people to publicize over the internet. Now you have to, because this is how people purchase items for the most part. Right? How many people now are no longer going to department stores? Now they're shopping on Amazon. If you're going to continue to be a successful business, you must stay ahead of the curve. Roger Goodell has failed to do that. And it is resulting in the very quick downward spiral of the perception of the NFL.
$44 million.
Okay, no. The money's great. But I'm saying the difficulty of navigating. By the way, is it Roger Goodell's fault that owners, now given a microphone, step in it? Like, Roger Goodell didn't create some of these missteps.
Well, that is a point taken. But it's Roger Goodell's job to create the atmosphere where owners are not put in the position to step in it. The reason why owners are stepping in it now is because of circumstances that have been fostered by him, where he has not handled the problem. The problem is spinning out of control. It's metastasizing to a point where you're putting owners in a position where they have to make statements that show a form of political correctness, and being billionaires, that's not something that they're accustomed to. They're not accustomed to having to be sensitive to other people, to being empathetic. That is not their forte. As 70-year-old Caucasian businessmen, they go back to an era where they could say what they want, how they want. So it's Roger's job to act as the intermediary between them and the public world. Once again, he's failed to do that.
It's owners who can't shut up.
It's his job. Look, if I read that story that was in ESPN and I was an NFL owner, and particularly if I was Bob McNair, I'm just sorry. I would be very upset with Roger Goodell and his people. That story was very sympathetic and pro Roger Goodell, and that was an offensive move by Roger Goodell and his people against ownership trying to save his own ship. I don't blame these guys for losing confidence.
Neither do I. And Roger Goodell has to know where his bread is buttered. At the end of the day, from what I understand, he was very conciliatory towards the players in those meetings that occurred with the owners and the players to discuss the protests. And you can't have that. because any show of weakness or any sign of non-unity amongst the NFL is going to embolden the players even more. And you can't have that. So Roger cannot be in a situation where he feels like he's looking to save his own hide, because his hide is directly linked with the NFL ownership. So maybe Roger's looking for a way out. Maybe this is becoming too much for him. Who knows? Maybe he may willingly step down.
I mean, you look at these situations overall, it's just tough. It's tough on Roger. It's tough on, I think, the NFL administration, as a whole. And at some point, there's some common ground that has to be found, throughout everything that's been through the protests, through Jerry Jones and voicing his opinions, and Roger and the decisions that he has to make. It's spiraling out of control. Somebody had...
Thank you, sir. That's the same terminology that I used. And let me say this. When there's a difference of belief, oftentimes there is no common ground. There is no common ground. And there has to be a loser. There has to be a winner. And you have to be willing to do what you need to do to win. In a situation like this, ideological disparities, especially ideological disparities that are going to affect the bottom line, you cannot negotiate. You must stipulate. And this is why, once again, the owners are so upset with Roger Goodell. America even has a credo: we do not negotiate with terrorists. Marxism is directly linked to a form of terrorism. We're going to make you do what we want you to do, or we're going to stop such and such from occurring. In this case, we're going to stop you from making money, or we're going to lower your your appeal to your main constituency by making a show of ourselves in front of or before the national anthem and the American flag, things that have become intrinsically linked with the NFL due to a very shrewd marketing program. So they're going to have to put their foot down, and they're going to have to draw a line in the sand, and they're going to have to tell the players that you're not going to cross this line. This is if they hope to save their business.
Somebody has to gain some control over this, and we got to find some common. Somebody has to step up and take control, because we're in a place in the National Football League that we've never been before. And obviously the answer's not there, but somebody has to find them.
Yeah, well, I think you're hitting it right there. They say we've never been here before, and if anybody's built to deal with it, it's Roger Goodell. I like him. Now, do I agree with everything? Do we agree with everything that he says? No, I don't agree with what everybody says. Even myself sometimes, they call you flip lock. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think you should flip sometime, because sometimes you have to analyze what you've done in the past and say, okay, well, I got it wrong, and I'm gonna get it right this time.
Agreed. That's the main sign of manhood, to say, you know what? New facts have emerged that have caused me to adjust my views.
He's done that. He has absolutely done that. With the Ray Rice situation, he has come out publicly and said, I got it wrong. And we're going to get it right, though, for the next time.
Well, he didn't have an option. He didn't have an option but to confess that he got it wrong, because that was one of the first levies of the super liberal behind-the-scenes movements to adjust to socially engineer the NFL, was the Ray Rice situation. But that was a major bungle by him. He should have understood. Now we're in the social media age. We're in the surveillance age. You can't just keep things under the rug like you could back in the 80s and 90s. Believe me, those guys were all coked out back in the 80s and 90s. Lawrence Taylor, Michael Irvin, all those guys, they got into far worse things with women, I'm sure, in casinos than Ray Rice did. But there were no tapes back then. There was no TMZ back then. There was very little internet back then, if at all. So, once again, you have to show scope. You have to show an understanding that you comprehend what's going on around you, the environment and the atmosphere that has been created around you, and adjust accordingly.
So a little bit of this with Jerry Jones, I got to believe a little bit is this whole Ezekiel Elliott too. Let's not throw that out there.
Absolutely.
Things are going on with that.
Let me throw a curveball.
It's a great point.
Bud Selig went from owner to commissioner because Jerry Jones may have his eyes on the main prize. And again, I honestly think it might not be a bad play. If I were turn it over to the family, Stephen Jones' son, Bud Selig turned the Milwaukee Brewers over to his family and ran the baseball. Jerry Jones might be the man for this time.
It's possible. I believe that Jerry Jones would definitely want that job, but I believe that the other owners would assert that it may be a conflict of interest. You know, his Cowboys tend to be the ones who get in the most trouble, and there could be a belief that Jerry would play favorites if his Cowboys were to get into any trouble, especially things that may cost them a chance at a title.
It is wartime, and I just think Rodgers a little too wishy-washy.
Also, it's hard to be in the...
And also just unaware. Rodgers just unaware of what's going on around him right now, and he's not really well suited to handle what's going on. I think that, you know, people get accustomed to dealing with the black male, and once again, the black male, due to the fact that the black male is at the bottom of the totem pole on the liberal hierarchy, Roger knows that he can speak to them however he wants, and nobody's really going to do anything. But with this, with the female empowerment agenda that was promoted through Ray Rice, and also the the woke movement that is really being put forth or pushed by the Black Lesbians Matter movement, some of the tactics that are being used are alien to Roger. He does not know how to handle it. Remember, also a couple of years ago, they tried to use the NFL for social engineering with the gay guy. Also, what's this guy's name? The gay dude that came out of Missouri, Michael Sam. Michael Sam was his name, but that failed. So they've been trying to use the NFL as a springboard for a lot of social engineering strategies and propaganda for a very long time. Or I shouldn't say for a very long time, at least for the last 5 to 6 years, back to back to back to back. And they've been trying to break down the NFL in that way.
Be in the catbird seat. So the NFL, everybody's been chasing it now for 20 years. I mean, social currency, it's bigger than the NBA. It's bigger. We bet it. We watch it. We fantasy football. We play it in America. It's our sport, really. It's not a global sport.
Right, and that's what makes it so suitable to act as ground zero for a lot of social engineering strategies. The NBA is so global that it pretty much already is very liberal, and there's no real need to recalibrate it. The NFL, as I've already stated, is directly linked with conservative Caucasian America. When you think NBA, you think, first off, you think black man, and then by extension, you think the other races all across the world. Then you also think Caucasians. They also enjoy the NBA. The NBA pretty much is already configured to be a force of globalism. The NFL isn't. So that's another reason why they want to use it as almost a petri dish, per se, to socially engineer. Recalibrate it, turn it into a woke league. If they resist, they'll just bring all type of confusion until they submit.
And so it's hard to stay in the league. I'd rather chase than be chased. And maybe this is the reality of being the commissioner. This is like running IBM. You don't run IBM for 50 years.
Well, that's true. You don't run IBM for 50 years, but the position that he's in is something that you have to engender a great deal of trust for them to put you in that position. All right. It's almost like the president of the United States. You have a certain task that you have to fulfill. You get a certain amount of liberties to do certain things outside of the overall agenda, but you do have to comply with the overall agenda, or you're going to have to be removed.
Well, it shouldn't be a lifetime appointment.
Of course not.
It shouldn't be you get to retire when you want to. Again, it's no shot at Roger Goodell.
Yes.
That things have changed in this country dramatically that have put the commissioner in all these leagues in spots they never imagined.
Yeah, but you know what? It is going to be considered a blight on Roger Goodell if he gets removed during this controversy, because it's going to be perceived that he was let go or he was removed due to being inept. And, and that will be partially true. All right, because unpreparedness is associated with ineptness.
And if he's not the right guy for this particular situation, that's not a shot at him.
No, listen.
Come on. It is a shot at him, Jason. How could you say it's not a shot at him when you open your soliloquy by saying that he's not a wartime consigliere? It is a shot at him. He's just not built for it.
So Adam Silver took over the NBA. And his first thing is he goes, I think gambling should. You're like, what? David Stern was anti-gambling. Adam Silver's like, we should gamble during the games. Everybody's shy of the players.
Yeah, because because Adam Silver was trying to find a way to catch up to the revenue stream of the NFL. The NFL is making almost $15 billion a year. The NBA is at around $6 billion a year, $6 to $7 billion, maybe a little bit over $5 billion a year. So Adam Silver, I'm sure that he has a lot of his monetary specialists analyzing the differences between the revenue streams of the NFL as opposed to the NBA. And one of the main revenue streams associated with the NFL is gambling.
That's the new world. So I do think David Stern was great. Adam Silver is younger and more of a player-friendly owner.
Well, Adam Silver's woke. So I've already stated that numerous times. He's woke, so they're not going to buck up against him because they know, number one, they can walk all over him. Adam Silver's like the substitute teacher. David Stern was like he was like the really strict teacher who he came in, you had to have your hands folded on your desk, and you had to have your, the assignment that he told you to do the night before, you had to have that on your desk and everything. Adam Silver's like he's like the substitute teacher who comes in and he lets the students talk all through class, and he lets them decide if they want to do their homework or not.
I think we need, if there is a replacement. I mean, Goodell's made the money to go buy a nice condo in Naples, Florida.
Shit, he made the money to go buy a condo in Naples, Italy. Fuck Naples, Florida.
Maybe it's time for a little younger, player-friendly commissioner.
No.
That's actually the opposite of what they need, Colin. Once again, you must consider your constituency. They actually need somebody who's going to bring the hammer down.
I
get that's your player. We need a David Stern in the NFL.
Absolutely agreed. You can't bring us some 27-year-old guy who is going to tell the players that it's all right to protest. Not when you consider your market. When you're running your business, you must consider your market. If you don't do that, your business is going to fail.
NFL office. Fearless. Because if you go look at David Stern, no, stand up for the national anthem. It's in our collective bargaining agreement. No, we're going to tell you how to dress when you come to the game.
And I remember how controversial that was when that happened. But looking back, that was definitely the right thing to do. Because the players were trying to, but this was back in the early 2000s. They couldn't do that today. But the attire of the players today is not bent towards the energy, towards how they dress. It's not bent towards so-called gangsterism. It's more bent towards self-expression, no matter how weird it is. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, players were dressing in a way to associate themselves or affiliate themselves with the quote-unquote street or with the quote-unquote hood, even if some of them were not even from the hood. So David Stern understood intrinsically that there was going to be an association with black gangsterism and NBA players, and he could not have that. When David Stern first took over the NBA, the first thing that he had to do was to eliminate the perception of the league that it was just a bunch of black cocaine users, which is what a lot of them were. A lot of players tell the story of when they first walk in the locker room or when they walk in the hotel room and all the players in the hotel snorting coke. Cocaine was a major problem in the 80s, in the NBA 70s and 80s. Look at Len Bias. David Stern helped clean that up. The NFL needs to bring in a commissioner that's going to clean up and clean out a lot of this nonsense that's going on. And once again, if you're a so-called black man, you should not be cheering on this nonsense at all, because it's not for you. I don't know how many times I got to say this. When they perform these protests, it's not for the benefit of the so-called black man. It's for the attention mongering of females, particularly lesbians and homosexuals and the transgenders. That's all it's for. And they're using the black man as infantry to take all the bullets.
Everybody thinks the NBA
that was also like 15 years ago. It's harder to do today.
It is harder to do, but it's what's necessary. Sometimes you got to be willing to take those bullets.
That'd be tough, though.
Absolutely. And it's going to be tough, like Tony Gonzalez said. But in order for you to bring order, you have to bring in tough reforms and you have to make tough decisions. And these are things that Roger has not shown that he's going to be able to do. All right, so now they're also going to touch on the Papa John issue with John Schnatter. Let's see what they have to say.
Let's move to the National Football League, where the national anthem protests continue to reverberate. Longtime sponsor Papa John's blaming the controversy for a recent decline in quarterly profits. The company revealed it's pulled much of its NFL advertising. CEO John Schnatter took a shot at Roger Goodell, saying, quote, "Good or bad leadership starts at the top, and this is an example of poor leadership. This should have been nipped in the bud a year and a half ago. NFL controversies polarizing the customer, polarizing the country."
Absolutely. And the amazing thing about this whole protest, and I've stated this before, is that the goal of the protesters is to open up dialogue with the same people who they're offending. It shows you how asinine they are.
Country. Whitlock, I think I know where you're going. Criticism from sponsors proof that Goodell's mishandled the anthem controversy?
I think without question, and I want to say this about Papa John. He's a Ball State grad. He's an Indiana guy, just like myself.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that he had the balls to say this.
Well, I don't think that it took much balls. I think that when you're operating an empire that's worth almost $1 billion, for all intents and purposes, John Schnatter, supposedly his value is somewhere around the $800 million range. Allegedly, they've lost $70 million in their last monetary assessment. So, of course, he's going to speak on it. And also, as I stated, I believe that he had a little battery put in his back by a couple of NFL owners.
And I think it's necessary for sponsors to speak out because, again, it's a television show. And they're off script. And it's bad TV. And it's
bad business, most important.
And it's bad for business. The only thing where I will quibble with John on is that he says this is poor leadership. I think this is the wrong leadership. I think Roger Goodell...
Well, I think that those two things are pretty much mutually associated with each other. I think that the owners are going to take advantage of how poorly Roger Goodell has been perceived by the liberal media and by the players to finally come on board and say, you know what? You guys were right the whole time. We need to get rid of Roger. And watch how strange it's going to be to see the NFL players try to stand up for Roger Goodell.
And Joe Lockhart are leading the NFL exactly where they want to take it. It's just the wrong leadership for the NFL. This league was built into prominence by Pete Rozelle and
Pete Rozelle, by the way, a big racist, a big overt racist, I should say. Let me specify.
A strategic plan to connect it to patriotism and the military and Sable NFL Films. This was all orchestrated, and they go out and hire as the commissioner the son of a liberal anti-war senator. That's who they hire.
Allegedly anti-war.
They hire as their commissioner. He's off-brand. It's not bad leadership. It's the wrong leadership.
Well, I think Goodell's an easy target. Papa John's pizza could be the problem, not the NFL. Maybe it's just the pizza. It's a very competitive market.
No, sir. No, Colin. You would have to do a very thorough evaluation to determine something like that. I'm sure that for Papa John to say something like that he knows that the correlation is the protesting. If there has been a stark drop-off since the Colin Kaepernick protest, if there's been a stark drop-off to the sales of his product, of course that's what he's going to associate it with. There hasn't been an emergence of any new pizza competitor in the last year and change, so why would he associate it with that?
I don't even buy the decline. I think the man wanted to take a shot because this is...
No, the decline is real, Whitlock. The decline is real.
This is all. I don't think their sales are hurting. I think the man wanted to take a shot at Roger Goodell and his bad leadership because there's a lot of sponsors. This is not what they want to be associated with. That they signed up for a different kind of TV show than one that protests in a very polarizing way.
But let me say this. First of all, I don't think very many commissioners are popular. I don't think presidents are popular. I can remember when Obama was president, gas was under $3, the market was up, inflation was down.
All that is true. But it's not Roger Goodell's job to be popular. It's his job to do his job. It's his job to make sure that you protect the bottom line. Roger Goodell has not been popular to the liberals, to the liberal sports media and to the players for many years now. But that never affected his viability to keep his job because what he was doing was helping the bottom line. Now what he isn't doing is hurting the bottom line. So now they're considering removing him. That's how it goes.
He was like a 50% approval rating. I think with social media, we're an angrier country. There's more ugly discourse. I think it's very hard to be popular in a leadership role.
I think that with social media, we're a more self-deceived country. You have people who are allowed to postulate their silly ideologies out to everyone and see who they can get to agree with them. I think that social media has allowed people to maintain their delusional world. You have so many people out there who know that they hate themselves, but they can get on social media and persist in perpetuating a facade for themselves that can get likes or thumbs up and help them maintain that facade as opposed to facing reality about themselves and truly getting help for themselves. That's the problem. That's one of the problems with social media. I don't think that it's made this society any more hateful. I think it's made it more delusional.
Everybody likes Adam Silver. He's been commissioner for an hour. Give him about 4 years in the public space and see if everybody likes him.
No, I think that they'll still like him in 4 years because he's liberal, he's woke. I don't believe that he's going to do anything that's going to really step on anybody's toes in regards to who he knows already supports him. The NBA has already, they've already placed their anchor in the ground or offshore. They placed their anchor deep down in regards to what they believe in, what they adhere to, and what they support. And that's same-sex marriage, transgenderism, discordianism. That's what they adhere to.
Tim?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think the issue with the leadership, and this goes way beyond Roger Goodell, you can go to the Players Association, you can go to the owners. The problem that we have right now is we're fighting a battle of being right as opposed to doing what is right. Now remember, when I came to the National Football League, we didn't go out for the national anthem. Until we started receiving money for the national anthem from the armed forces, until the NFL started profiting off of that, we never even went out. Seth, you didn't go out for that.
Not when I first started.
When we first started, we didn't go out for the national anthem. It wasn't until the military started paying the National Football League.
It is a bit smart.
I understand.
Thank you, sir. That's just what I was about to say. I know a lot of people make this point that they did not go out for the national anthem until about 11, 12 years ago. But, well, what should that tell you? That should tell you that the NFL is a business. It should tell you that the national anthem is the theme song of a corporation. It has nothing to do with instilling pride in your country. It is the theme song of a corporation. So it doesn't invalidate the owner's stance that they only started to associate the national anthem with players a few years ago. That was the next step in their marketing plan. Either way, you're fucking with their bottom line, which is going to affect the players because the revenue is split between the owners and the players. So if the revenue is going down for the owners, it's going to go down for the players as well. And particularly for guys who clearly don't have an end game, they clearly don't know what they're doing or why they're doing it. They're just being led by their emotions. It is a very dangerous thing to kowtow to them.
I understand that. But the point being is that I think the issue here is these two sides butting heads. This is not just about the national anthem protests. This is about business and what we've done as a league. We have, in the last collective bargaining agreement, bargained out practice time. Bargained out. That's what we've settled on. And
right, and that's also part of the evolution of the NFL. Like you said, you were not coming out for the national anthem when you came into the NFL, and one can say that many other changes have been initiated, not just the national anthem, but also in regards to their approach towards concussions and player safety, etc. So things change. It doesn't mean that things were necessarily better back then. It's just that everything is done for the bottom line. Why is the NFL paying so much attention to concussions? Because they had to pay out billions of dollars in settlements when it was found that there is a direct correlation between playing football and CTE.
What you've gotten is an inferior product. Playing offensive line is like this secret mushroom society. What Seth and I did, playing on the defensive front seven, there's this secret society. Nobody really knows what's going on unless you play it. But you can see when it looks bad, right? You can see a bunch of different mushrooms laid out here, and you can go, yeah, those are mushrooms. But you don't know which one is which. But when you see them all moldy and stuff, you're like, I ain't eating any of them. And that's what we've gotten. We've gotten this protest stuff going on. We've negotiated practice time. So what we've ended up doing is not negotiated in parity. We've negotiated in mediocrity. And that's what we see on a week-to-week basis with the NFL right now.
Look, they gotta move on from Mark Schlereth because he's totally taking it somewhere else. They're talking about Roger Goodell and the protesting, and he's talking about how frustrated he is with the offensive line play. Like, come on, man, get it together.
Yeah.
Roger Goodell has handled this situation about as well as he could handle it. Because when you talk about protests and constitutional rights, these young players have the right to protest the way that they want to protest.
Absolutely, they do, and they also have the right to suffer the consequences. Sorry, bro. But nowhere in real society, in real life, do you have the right to do what you want to do without repercussions.
As far as Papa John's being down, the NFL probably being down, someone yesterday on the show, Jason, talked about the upward trajectory of the NFL for the last 30 years. For the last 30 years, they've been ascending this way.
Yeah.
Okay? At some point in time, the natural law said everything that goes up must come down
Agreed.
or flatten out at some point. What we're seeing is a flattening out of the NFL. The NFL, when I came out in the second class of free agency, okay, the salary cap was $62.5 million. Okay? In 2017, the salary cap is $166 million for the same 53 players on the same 32 teams.
So is that really what your issue is, brother? Is your issue truly that you're frustrated that you played in the wrong era and that now you have to work at a sports news station because you're not making the money that players are today where you could afford to retire and just kick back? Many of these older players are angry at the NFL because they feel used. So they don't mind the protesting because they feel like anything that will help bring the NFL down, they're good with it. Seth Joyner comes off as one of these brothers who, and don't get me wrong, he's moderately intelligent. His comments are concise and they have a point. But he seems like one of these brothers who's frustrated that he played in the wrong era and he did not really get to reap the monetary benefits that players today are reaping. And he would like to see the NFL get a foot in its ass.
At some point in time, things have to equal out.
Those must come down.
It must equalize. I buy.
Well, I agree that what goes up must come down, but the issue is that is it coming down because of a lack of appeal? Is it coming down because people no longer want to watch football, or is it being socially engineered to be brought down? That's really the issue.
Buy it because that's just the natural law.
The other thing is, what's become really obvious to me over the last 5 years. Football became so dominant. Baseball moved off. NBA couldn't keep up. College football. I feel there's been a real, not an orchestrated campaign, but in a way on social media, semi-orchestrated. There's an anti-NFL narrative with the media.
Thank you, sir. I've been saying that for a while now. They are socially engineering. It is a narrative. They are socially engineering the NFL to try to bring it down and bring it back to the rest of the pack. The NFL was in a very lofty position for a long time. The liberal media has been frustrated by that because the NFL is not answerable to them like the NBA is, and they're trying to, show the NFL that look, you don't get too big for your britches.
Yeah, there's no question about it. There's a war on football.
Okay,
and that's why I say they got the wrong leadership.
Okay, but if there was a war on anything, leadership becomes. Governments have been toppled. Social media is a component.
But if I'm Jerry Jones and I'm the NFL and I'm paying somebody $40-50 million a year, I want the right general
okay, let's say the right,
for this war.
Okay, but if you're overwhelmed, even a 5-star general has no shot.
No, sir. That's not true. That's not how it works. What if they had that attitude during World War II? It's either death or it's either death or dishonor. All right? There's no retreat, no surrender. That is how those men think. There's no scenario where they accept defeat, Colin. You can't have it like that. Defeat means, that now you get dictated to. That is not how those men think.
Again, you got to have a general who's on your team. And whether people like it or not, the NFL was founded in some conservative, patriotic values, and that's why it became the force that it is.
Thank you, sir.
And they have signed up with someone, he and Joe Lockhart, who aren't cut from the same cloth as them. They don't believe the same things as Jerry Jones and what made the NFL great. And so when I hear Bob McNair say inmates running the prison, everybody thinks he's talking about the players. I think he's talking about Roger Goodell, Joe Lockhart, and Troy Vincent, and some of the people making a decision making that they're paying for. And what he's talking about, the NFL Players Association.
I don't know about that one. I would have to have been in the room to hear the context. I believe that what Bob McNair was talking about when he said the inmates running the prison, I think he was talking about the players. But who knows? He may have been talking about Roger Goodell and Troy Vincent because maybe he feels like the owners maybe Bob McNair felt like the owners were allowing Roger Goodell to stipulate to them what their tactics should be in dealing with the players as opposed to him just following their instructions. So, I mean, that is an interesting take, but I would have to have been there to hear the proper context. You know, Whitlock need to subscribe to my channel, you know. This man, he need to subscribe to my channel, you know, just lay off the damn hot dogs.
But exactly what you say. He was speaking about the players in that locker room. He was not talking about
He could have been
the
talking about
leadership
them both.
of the NFL.
I will say this. One of the issues one of the issues with the NFL right now, and from a leadership standpoint, greed and the fact that I believe it's the owners, it's the greed of the owners and the fact that they have gotten to the point where they thought they were unflappable.
Well, not unflappable, untouchable. If they were unflappable, they would not be so flummoxed right now by what's going on.
And an issue right now,
Thursday game, Monday game.
Right, there's a scarcity of games, and when you start giving all the good Sunday games away to Thursday night, you give them to Monday night, you give them to Sunday night,
Diluted the product.
You've diluted the product, you're not practicing, the product is mediocre compared to what it used to be in our halcyon days of looking back and remembering what the product was.
Yo, I remember back when I was a kid, Monday Night Football was an event. Like, it was an event, man. They've definitely watered down that product. Monday Night Football used to be such a big deal. Now they've kind of transitioned it over to Sunday Night Football. Sunday Night Football is considered the big game of the week now. But when I was a kid, it was Monday Night Football, man. I remember being a kid and, you know, Monday night would be San Francisco against the Giants, and it'd be Joe Montana against Lawrence Taylor, Jerry Rice, and all those guys. It was crazy. But, I mean, hey, in the process of expanding your business, sometimes you overstep your bounds, and that's when you know that it's time to constrict it, to bring it, to reel it back in.
It's
by the
just
way,
changed.
all these owners love to blame the commissioner. They're the ones moving St. Louis to L.A., Oakland to Vegas, the stadium. They're the ones. These owners are the ones. Let's have a Super Bowl in Jacksonville. Not equipped for a Super Bowl. Let's have cold weather Super Bowls. The owners. By the way, let's move a game to Thursday. Goodell wasn't for that.
Yeah, but have any of those things affected the bottom line, Colin? Once again, we have to stay focused on what the issue is. The issue is that these protests have affected their bottom line and it's trickled over into their sponsors. That's what the issue is.
Let's cave to whatever the players want. That's Roger Goodell, and that's why these owners are upset. They don't have bad leadership. They got the wrong leadership.
But anyway, I just thought this was a very interesting conversation on the Roger Goodell issue. Let's see what happens. I believe that eventually they're going to trump up enough charges to really corroborate why they want him to be moved or him to be removed. But we'll see. Anyway,